good morning, and welcome to the OSBA Forum. I'm your host, Mark Bobo, and we're glad you've taken time today to be with us on the OSBA Forum. As always, the forum comes to you with up-to-date information and dialogue around pressing issues in public education. We're talking to the policymakers, the decision makers, and those that directly impact public education here in the state of Ohio. And today is no different. Well, it's a little bit different, as I'm flying solo today because our normal co-host is on the panel. We're excited and thankful and welcome the representation of the 4 educational leadership associations that represent a wide membership in public education, namely the Ohio Association of School Business Officials, the Buckeye Association of School Administrators, the Ohio Educational Services Center Association, and of course, the Ohio School Board Association. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. Please introduce yourselves, your name, and the association that you represent, and tell us a little bit about your membership. Jim, go ahead and kick us off.
Great, thank you, Mark. Jim Rowan, Executive Director for OSBA, finishing 7 years with the organization. OSBA is a not-for-profit organization. We're headquartered in Westerville, Ohio. We represent over 1,800 members statewide. Those that are on the business side of the school district, CFO treasurers, business managers, transportation supervisors, food service supervisors, and all the support staff that sits behind the business office.
Welcome, welcome. Craig?
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having us. My name is Craig Burford. I'm the Executive Director for the Ohio ESC Association. I've been in this role for 23 years. We represent the 51 ESCs around the state and are located here in the OSBA building and share a suite with BASA. And so it's great to be here and part of the panel today. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Dave.
Hello, Mark, and again, thank you for having us. Dave Axner, Executive Director with the Buckeye Association of School Administrators, known as BASA. We represent we've got about 95% of our members are the school superintendents. We also have some directors and even some principals that have slided in there too. So our job, again, is to really educate them, get them sometimes ready for a job, but also help them in the General Assembly when this busy time we're in now has a big part of that.
Welcome. Thanks, Dave. Kathy.
Hi, everyone. Isn't Mark doing a great job? I'm Kathy McFarland. I'm your Deputy Executive here at Ohio School Board Association, and our association serves public school board members, ESCs board members, JVSDs, and Career and Tech Center board members. I've been in public education for over 30 years, 26 of them being in the building, and now 5.5 years here at OSBA. So thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you to our guests for coming into the OSBA house. Yeah. It's fun. We're the fun house.
Glad to have each of you here. So let's just jump right into it. I would like for each of you to speak to, obviously there's challenges and issues within public education. From your membership's perspective, what are some of the challenges that they are seeing, and how is your association addressing them? Jim?
Well, I think obviously number one is to ensure that there's equitable and adequate funding to educate the public school children in Ohio. That's probably at the forefront of our member concerns. But I also think just making sure that they stay in tune with policy changes, legislative changes that impact their daily life, the pipeline shortage of candidates coming into the profession, whether that's in the role of CFO treasurer or just the support staff that it takes to run the office. So what we do as an organization is we provide those advocacy services along with our partner associations. We provide the content and leadership development to make sure that they are trained and ready to resolve the issues at the local level. And then we also provide a collaboration forum so that they can actually share best practices. And we communicate daily with our members to make sure that they stay abreast of all the changes that are facing public education.
Greg, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think it'd be similar to what Jim said in terms of our members seeing students and staff coming to school with bigger challenges than probably pre-pandemic, and some of it's been exacerbated as a result of that, and how they provide that ongoing support. And I think just generally speaking, learning, we don't like to call it learning recovery, but learning acceleration, and trying to identify those areas where districts are in need of the most support, and how we build capacity among the ESCs to be that regional support provider. So we're thinking a lot about building ESC knowledge and capacity around those new requirements and any laws that the legislature puts in place. how do we make sure that we have the supports at the ESC to assist districts in implementing new things that are asked of them.
Thank you. Dave?
A lot of the same, you know, subject areas. I think one of the things that we're really proud of at BASA, for decades, excuse me, we've had a new superintendent's transition program. And it's critical to get our superintendents through that first year in an opportunity to understand the job. It's very different than, not better, but different than a building, you know, principal that many come from, assistant superintendent, because now you're in charge. The relationships with the school boards is so critical. And again, it's a big topic of what we talk about and discuss, bring school board members, Kathy's been in, just to talk and so they understand where everybody's coming through. But the new, to no cost to districts, we run a program that's about 8 sessions through their first year and really dive in a day and a half beginning in that summer when they've just signed a contract to help them get through month by month. And it's becoming more and more critical that we do that right.
Yeah. Kathy?
Yeah, thanks, and thank you to my colleagues. It's great to hear that we're all kind of wrestling with the same challenges. I would say, just like Jim mentioned, that pipeline, we're concerned about the teacher pipeline, Mark, of course, of getting quality teachers into our schools, but also retaining them once they get there. Yeah. Also the public school funding, which Jim, of course, could probably talk a little bit more about in depth. I would say just student barriers, being able to make sure that our board members understand what are the things that are barriers for our students, and keeping up on top of relevant topics. I don't know if you've heard anything about AI, artificial intelligence, and as a former English teacher, what that's going to look like in the schoolhouse. Science of reading, which is what Governor DeWine talked about. So just making sure that our board members are up to speed with what relevant topics are going on in public education. How do we do that? We have a hands-down outstanding team here, Mark, and you know that. We have a legislative team that can, does our advocacy for us and keeps their arms around things that are going on at the State House and what bills are moving through the different houses. The legal team providing legal information to our districts. Board and management services are always out training, be it a strategic plan or a superintendent search. They help with those things. And then, of course, our communication division, which is helping us today, but also provides really great training. So I would say that we are all aligned with that. The teams that we work with who are doing great things for kids are facing the same challenges. So that's why it's so imperative that we continue to work together and keep our lines of communication open.
Yeah, I heard some specific words: partnership, collaboration. Very important as we're all dealing with some of the same type of issues. Different perspectives on it, but certainly it's along the same lines of alignment. Craig, you mentioned 51 ESCs across the state. And for many of our audiences, this might be their first introduction to what an ESC is and how it's managed. If you could just share some insights on how an ESC is managed differently than a local school district.
Sure. Well, maybe I'll start with the similarities, which is we are political subdivisions and considered school districts in state law, and so by extension LEAs in federal law. So we have publicly elected school boards, and they choose a superintendent and treasurer, and those folks work together to set policy directions, strategic direction for the organizations. But from there, we're, I guess, much more of a regional support organization. We kind of sit firmly between districts and the state. The state will often turn to ESCs to help in the deployment of different state initiatives. So as an example, we're part of the statewide literacy network. We've got several hundred ESC staff that have already been trained around the science of reading and are well positioned to help districts implement some of those requirements that will come out from the state. On the flip side, from the district side up, the 51 ESCs look very different. We'll have our smallest ESCs in Putnam and Preble County that look different and provide different services, where districts probably rely more on some of the day-to-day special ed related services and staffing supports than an ESC of Northeast Ohio or ESC of Central Ohio that are much bigger and are serving larger districts who have a lot of capacity and may rely more on ESCs for consulting services and instructional coaching and those types of things. So we're kind of right in that, our sweet spot is our middle name, service, and being service delivery agencies.
Can you speak a little bit more about that statewide literacy network that's getting started? Obviously, the science of reading, it's coming, and districts are having to make the adjustments. Talk a little bit about the statewide literacy network.
Sure. So we've been fortunate. This is one of the things maybe we'll touch on a little bit later, that the department has recognize the role of ESCs in being that regional deployment arm, along with the 16 state support teams. Melissa Weber Mayer and her team at the department created the statewide literacy network a few years ago, well in advance of this new initiative. And so they've been spending the last couple of years trying to build up that capacity and accelerating it, recognizing some of the challenges that kids have had over the last few years. So I think we're well positioned and well poised that when that new requirement comes into effect, that we're in a place to support districts in implementing the work.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So, Jim, in thinking about, you had shared how your association represents school business officials and the business and finance side of the district. What we've noticed here in the last few years is a lot more districts are going away from the treasurer and looking to employ a CFO. If you could talk to us a little bit about how that connotation kind of changes the role and responsibility, and just a little bit about that history of that.
Absolutely, Mark.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting transition. I remember being back in high school, never heard of school treasurer. It's because there were clerks back then. You know, up until 1978, the position was clerk, and in 1978 they changed the position to clerk treasurer, and then ultimately to treasurer. But it really dates back to the late 1700s when townships were required to provide a parcel of land for that local community school, and then they would share a clerk between the township and the school district. And then over time, as those responsibilities expanded, and as you look at public school districts today and how big they are, it's much more than just those local township schools. The responsibilities have evolved as well. So in 1983, the State Board of Education established new standards for licensure, and they raised the educational and experience requirements to become a school treasurer. As a result of that, in 2007, legislation was introduced to transition that position from treasurer to be also recognized and identified as chief financial officer. And the goal then was to more align those administrative contracts with those other types of administrative contracts in the school district. Ohio is very unique, and then we have the duality of control, where the treasurer and the superintendent report to the Board of Education. And as you look at the responsibilities statewide now that impact the school treasurer, from grants to accounting to reporting to auditing, the responsibilities have increased much greater than back in the early 1800s. So I think it's just kind of evolved over time that level of responsibility has increased, and the expectation now is no longer to be that clerk where you sit in the office and you just count numbers. The goal is that you're the financial leader in the district, and you're out there in the community helping to educate the importance of public education.
Wow, you said something very significant there. There's a different perspective on the treasurer now to be part of the community, leading as far as that financial voice. So you're saying treasurers are out there now speaking directly to communities?
Absolutely. When I retired as a school treasurer in 2011, and part of my responsibility was to attend the local community groups, whether it be the Rotary, the Kiwanis, the Lions Club, the Mayor's Breakfast. I was looked at as being that financial leader in the public school district, and I worked collaboratively with the superintendent and the leadership team in promoting education. I knew my role was in the financial area. I'm there to be a financial advisor. I'm not to be the guy that says, no, you can't spend this, you can't spend that. That's not my decision. My decision is to advise the leadership team and the Board of Education. These are the resources we have, and it's up to them to drive the educational program. But you are a key member of that leadership team.
Wow, thank you for that. So Dave, in thinking about superintendents nowadays, we've seen, and each of you spoke to it on some level, we're all dealing with issues of retention. And we're seeing that all across the nation from every level of public education, and superintendents haven't been immune to that. What I'd like you to speak to is, are we seeing that trend here in the state of Ohio? And what are you hearing from your membership in that regard, as far as superintendents that have left education for other career choices?
Sure. Would you want to be a superintendent? You don't have to answer that. I think it's we're in a time zone right now where it's a difficult job. It's hard to be a superintendent, and it always has. But in the end, everyone up here can talk about responsibilities and those things that they have to do and lead. But in the end, it normally falls on the superintendent, and that superintendent lives and dies on everything from the relationships with their treasurer, the relationships with their school board members that change every few years. Maybe those school board members that hired me in 4 years are gone, and I have a completely new
Yeah.
board. So that's always been around. I think about when I was in the superintendency, and I led small districts, and I led large districts. And I would tell you that it reminds me a lot of when I was a basketball official, because I was never right, kind of like being home. There's always going to be 50% of the people that, hey, it's a good idea, and 50% that like, what the heck are you doing? And so you kind of become numb to that and do the best you can, and those relationships are huge. I think the biggest difference that I've seen in the last few years is, and it's really unfortunate that the national politics are seeping down into our local school boards. And I know, for one, I was so fortunate to have unbelievable school boards. I really have. But some of that I got to take at least a little credit in regards to I kept them up to speed. I didn't make decisions without them knowing and understand where we're heading. If it's big financial, they're going to know about it. We're going to work through with the treasurer. We're collectively going to have the discussion. But now, at times, we've got those that minds might be made up when they walk in the door, and it's because I feel this way politically, and that's what I'm supposed to do. So that's what's tough, and we still have to be at the table. We still have to treat every single school board member, staff member the same, and work with them regardless of how that tension can be. But it's hard, and you go home and from a long day, and you turn around and you get up and do it again. So the numbers, the national associations will tell you, nah, it's not too off. I think there's still people that want superintendent jobs, but there's less of them. So in the day, I can go back. I remember 10, 15 years ago when, I was either looking at jobs or watching others and so forth, and you would see 50 candidates, and 40 of those are darn good and would be good superintendents. It was hard. Now, the search teams will tell you, you get a couple good candidates, school boards, you better run with that and find one before they take another job. So I think it is, I still feel it's a great job, and I think the majority of superintendents that would tell you that. But when you break it down and look at the stress and the tension, it's just like the calamity day. You call it or you don't, and you got people on both sides that are going to like your decision or not.
Yeah, you say it's a 50-50 shot every time for superintendents. They love you when you use the calamity day, but if you don't use it appropriately, it's something else. What are you hearing from the superintendents as far as how they are taking care of their mental health and their wellness in the midst of the realities of our times?
Yeah. Well, you look around Ohio, that hasn't been perfect. We've lost some incredible and talented superintendents because of the politics. And so it does work on you. I think the biggest difference from going back, 15, 20 years to what's happening now, the information is immediate. And it's immediate. It's immediate in the buildings with the kids. It's immediate with your school board. You better hurry up and tell them because they're going to see it somewhere else. And so to manage that, you've got to be on 100% all the time. And you got to be ready. And I can't speak to how critical it is that your team has to have your back and work together too. I'm most proud of the team that we have at BASA right now. Everyone's been a superintendent. Those directors are incredible. We've got, a deputy and a governmental relationship that, all in the last couple of years changed, but they've got some valuable experience and can lead and update and so forth. Our new superintendent's program, we've really upped the ante and really tried to get our new superintendents a good base, but mostly keep them out of trouble so there aren't issues in that first year that sometimes you can't recover from.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that perspective. So Kathy, it's a board election year, and of course our boards of education are front and center in their communities, as that people will be going to the polls here in November to make determinations on what their school boards will look like going forward. I want you to kind of share with us why local leadership is so critical in today's climate.
Right, that's a great question, Mark. So board members play such an integral role of being a part of the leadership team. And when I say leadership team, I'm in regards to the superintendent, the treasurer, kind of that three, what is it called?
Three-leg stool.
Three-leg stools, thank you. So they're there to represent their community, right? They are elected officials, and they are to come to the table and come to the leadership team to represent what I like to call local collaboration, working with their parents and their communities in regards to setting that strategic plan, working with that leadership team, they kind of decide the what. Let's decide, where do we want to hit, and then our team over here, especially our superintendent and treasurers, say, hey, here's how we're going to get there, right? Board members don't necessarily work at the building level, but they work very closely with the superintendent to say, we've set these goals, you tell the staff and the leadership team how to get there, and then let's just make sure that we're continuing to touch base and make sure that we're working towards those goals. They set policy direction. They work with invested parties to listen to what's going on in their communities, and we know that many of our districts are very different, right?
Yes.
And so it's really important for them to look to their parents, to their students, to their staffs, and to understand locally how they can collaborate and work together so that our students can be successful. And really, the number one priority really in a district is to get them to graduate from high school. And so getting and working together to make sure that our students are accomplishing that.
You had mentioned earlier about student barriers, being an issue.
Yeah.
You talk about now that local collaboration. What I'm hearing from you is that it's important to hear all the voices,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, that board has to be able to make the sound decision with the information that they are being given.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as Jim and Dave pointed out, and Craig also, is making sure that this team is collaborating, right? Your leadership team always has to be staying in contact and communicating and having a lot of times those tough conversations, Mark, and to talk things through, because I always say we have to model for our students how to have tough conversations and how to make hard decisions. So it's really important, once again, for the treasurer, the superintendent, to utilize your ESCs and your board members to continue to work hard for our kids.
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of, we've talked about the challenges and things of that nature, but I also hear an undertone of hope that our associations are bringing things to the forefront to make sure that we're taking care of our membership, to make sure they have this resources and supports they need to continue to be effective leaders in their districts and ESCs and in their communities. What I'd like to hear is just a little bit about some of the initiatives that our associations are spearheading right now to get our membership excited about what we're doing. So Jim, just kick us off.
Sure. Well, I think a couple things that stick out that we work on collaboratively with our other education associations is obviously the Fair School Funding Plan and the work group and all the work that they're doing, the Hearts and Souls campaign to try to get our legislators in our school districts to see exactly what's going on in the classroom and celebrate public education. A couple specific things that we're doing at OSBA is we, in 2018, it was just updated in 2022, we brought a number of our members together from our Education Finance Committee and our Department of Education Advisory Committee, and we updated our cash balance white paper. And that white paper is to provide best practice guidance in how to manage cash management. There's a lot of one-time money that comes into schools. You have a lot of reservations that need to be set aside, whether you're self-insured, workers' comp, self-insured health care, retirement plans. There's a lot of reasons you want to reserve money, capital reserves, to fund a roof in the future. So the idea of this white paper was basically to provide best practice guidance for districts to be able to communicate with their community. These are the resources we have. This is how we're allocating those reserves. A good best practice is to have at least 90 days of operating cash on hand so that if something happens, you have a cash flow shortage, you can at least manage to pay the bills until it comes in. And I think finally the most proud thing that we're working on, I spoke to this earlier with regards to our pipeline, is that we have a CFO Treasurer Licensure Pathway Program. It's a curricular-based pathway program that allows individuals to come through and take a series of courses to get licensed as a school treasurer. Now, they have to still meet the educational requirements as outlined by the Department of Education, but instead of doing the 300-hour internship, which can be very difficult for someone in the private sector working a full-time job, they can actually come through a boot camp or they can take these courses on demand, and it's content driven based on the duties and responsibilities associated with the treasurer. And so when they complete those 6 courses, then they take an assessment, and then they have to give a 5-year forecast capstone presentation to a peer group, and then we'll either pass them or fail them, or they get 2 opportunities to kind of come through the program. And we've graduated over 45 candidates now out of this program, and we're seeing a lot of individuals coming out of the classroom. We're seeing superintendents come through our program, athletic directors, EMIS coordinators, a lot of individuals in the private sector. So we're working collaboratively, not only in-house, but also with the Department of Education on updating the educational requirements, not to necessarily reduce the level of responsibilities to get into the profession, but are there different types of courses that individuals can take to become a school treasurer? Instead of taking 9 accounting hours, what if I had finance or business or statistics or economics? So we're trying to remove some of those barriers to get those individuals into the association.
And that aligns directly with the expansion of CFOs and the responsibilities that are dictated to that you have to look at the training just a little bit differently and honor even some other type of credits that could be afforded for that type of training.
Absolutely. And once they get into the program, kind of like what Dave was talking about earlier, then once they graduate and they're placed in a district, then we actually provide a one-year mentoring program where we align them with a veteran CFO treasurer, and we provide the support to make them successful as that treasurer.
And let me ask that, the white paper you mentioned previously,
Yes.
is that something available on your website to your membership?
It is available online for our membership. That is
Wow,
correct.
That's great, that's great. Craig, what things are happening at the ESC Association?
So it's pretty exciting that I think in the last couple of years, we finally are seeing the ESC network come back together and work as a statewide network. I think some of the legislative changes that allowed districts to choose their ESC every 2 years created competition and maybe a little bit of distrust between it amongst our members. And what we saw come out of the pandemic was a need for people to come together and figure out how to work more collaboratively, leverage strengths across the network. Recognition that we can't be all things to all people, but together we can fill some of those gaps and be stronger and better for it. So we have 6 different initiatives that we're doing on behalf of the department that 4 ESCs are kind of serving as the fiscal agents. But pre-pandemic, we had pitched an idea to the department of doing this collaborative co-design where we'd sit down with ODE staff, and when an idea was or a problem of practice was brought forward, ESCs would work collaboratively with the department to think through what that might look like and design the response together, as opposed to it just being something pushed down from the state. And we were slow to get things started. When the pandemic hit and there was a need to do things more rapidly, it sort of started to take root a little bit. So what we are doing currently is we have a couple initiatives, one around high quality instructional materials. So we've got a couple of cohorts of ESCs that are working with school districts on how to identify and select high quality instructional materials around English language arts. Mid next year, they'll focus in on math. We've got an initiative around alternative math pathways to meet the Algebra 2 requirements, so training up educators around the state around those 3 different alternative pathways to meet that. Building capacity, what we call regional data leads. So how do you take all that information, report card data, help interpret that, sit with educators to use that to help inform instruction. And then they're building off of some of that work to focus on issues around chronic absenteeism. So how do we identify what those issues are, what data points to there being a problem? And again, building capacity at the ESCs to go out and train districts on how to identify when there are challenges and address those early on and ensure that the appropriate interventions are being put in place. And then the last one, there are kind of 2 kind of parallel initiatives. One is something called the Ohio Professional Learning Directory, which I can just only think of as a search engine for professional development, that we are going around and identifying ODE-created PD, ESCs, state support teams, universities, and public broadcasting, and the like, and reaching out to OLAC and next to the professional associations and nonprofits, so that there's one place that educators can go, as opposed to just doing a broad general search to see what they can come up with, and identify those things right away. And then parallel to that is something called the Ohio Learning Community, which is more of a shared space LMS that districts, if they don't have one or would like to have an environment that they can share information between and amongst their staff, they can create their own professional development, that space is there free for folks to use.
That learning directory and the learning community, is there a launch date for those things?
So they both launched in mid-January.
Okay.
So we're still very much in the infancy, and we're getting to that point now where we've really used these first 3 months as, I'd sort of say, a soft launch, if you will, to now start to gauge, is it set up the right way? Is it easy to access? Does it have the content in it that you'd like to see there? And as I said, I think the next step is we've gone out and met with the different associations, but making sure that it's easy for folks to put things in and that it's not duplicative to other things that they're doing. The idea is to really point people in the direction of current professional development opportunities that are out there, and make it more easily accessible.
That could be a very powerful tool, because unfortunately sometimes people just put in a Google search and try to get professional development that way. But if we have a dedicated resource and repository like that, I think it'd be very powerful for each of our memberships.
OhioPLD.org.
Ah, there it is.
Why don't you go check
Looking
it
for
out?
the plug. Dave, what good things are happening
Sure.
there at
Well,
BASA?
and need to give Craig a plug. I'll tell you, during COVID, we were very fortunate the ESC stepped up and helped distribute. And PD-wise and what we needed to do, it was an easy way to reach all districts and do that regionally, and because they're different
Yes.
districts in Ohio obviously are very diverse. So job well done. Yeah, so I would just name a couple. First of all, what we've done in the last few years is really try to go back to our roots. There's different things happening, but to a degree, leadership is leadership and relationships and all those things. So BASA's been around for over 50 years. And so we went back and even if you walk in our office now, we've changed that up a little bit, and there's pictures on the wall, but it's the old guard. It's people who used to do these jobs.
I see.
If you go in our conference room, we kind of stole from you guys a little bit. All our past presidents are there. I know I have an opportunity to talk to past executive directors. I just wrote them a letter. I admire them. They helped me get where I am today, and so we can't ever forget that. I think I guess the tone is what has got out of whack right now in regards to doing business. And so in the office, we've talked a lot about, we want to be part of the conversation. You can get mad, and just because, it's an R, or it's a D, or it's this or that, obviously we aren't a proponent for anything that's bad for schools and our students. But to a degree, we try to understand it. We try to get into discussion, and it may end up that instead of just jumping on and opposing it, that we become an interested party. And if we know it's coming, we want to at least be in that conversation and do maybe what would be the least amount of harm and so forth. And so attitude-wise, I think there's been a shift. And then finally, I would just talk, we're so proud we were able to bring back our Ohio School Leadership Institute, which right now, today, it's one of the 2-day sessions. We've got 30 superintendents engaged with a company out of North Carolina, and we're able to do that for them at no cost. And it's unbelievable professional development for them, because they're not learning all about the superintendency, but they're learning about leadership. So they're learning how to work together. They're doing 360s on themselves from their district. They're in groups, and they come out of that. We've heard just people rave about the opportunity to be in. And we've now, BASA's probably run 2,000 or more superintendents through that. It's 30 at a time. It's a year long. They're day-and-a-half sessions, so you're out of your district. Your school board has to be on board to allow that. But almost everyone comes out of that, and they immediately have 29 other friends in the superintendency too, which really helps.
Yeah, and that builds a camaraderie and a network that people can lean on. And as you said, leadership is leadership, and it's yet critical in these days. So it's good to hear that training is happening, and the continued development of leadership at the school level, really critical. So that's wonderful. Kathy, share some initiatives that OSBA is doing.
Yes, but first of all, I do want to do a little shout out. BASA offers a women's in leadership training that Kathy Deemer, I believe, on your team oversees, and it's been fantastic. And I'm going to tell you, I've kind of slid in the back a couple times, and
You're always welcome.
so, but they have some really great things. That's the nice thing about living in the same house, is we can join each other's trainings. But Mark, our job is to listen to our membership, and we have over 700 districts that we support and members districts that we support, and they're all different, and they're very diverse. And so our job is we provide their resources, trainings, and services to them. One of the things we just kicked off this year is our strategic plan, which you're very familiar with, which we brought in board members and working with our staff to create what kind of our path is for the next 5 years with this strategic plan. The other thing is we have our Star Award program that if board members want to get a little bit more specific about their training, we have an awards program that they can work on, that Star Award, which is on our website. I'm just going to say the number one thing I think that we really are doing and continue to do, and today's a good example of that, is relationships. You have to have relationships. You have to have that support network. You have to have colleagues that you can call and say, hey, what are your ideas about this? How can you support our members? How can we support you? And I think today, like I said, is an indication of our continued effort to do that, is to work together. I'm looking forward to doing trainings together, to bringing, in that leadership team and having them have some time together. We are doing a lot of things. We're trying to listen to our consumers. Our consumers, being our members, are taking information. They want it quickly, they want it fast, and they want to move on. So we're doing things. Our communications department is doing a great job of creating these videos that are a few minutes long, but are real focused on a topic so that you can pull it up. It's timely, it's relevant, I can watch it, and then move on. And so we are really trying to listen to what our members need, and providing it in a way that is good for them and helps them in their leading of their district.
Yeah, great. I think one thing we can all agree on is that we all benefit and believe and need an engaged membership. Each of us can attest to that our associations are driven by our membership. And I would be remiss as the membership engagement consultant for OSBA not to ask, what's the best way that your members can get more involved with your association? Jim, start us off.
Well, absolutely, Mark. OSBA is a member-driven organization. We've been a member-driven organization since 1936. Our strength is in our members. There's a lot of ways to serve. We have 15 regional chapters and committees. We have a number of statewide committees. Our members can step up and be a part of a committee. They can lead a committee. They can be a part of a chapter. They can lead a chapter. They can be a mentor, a seminar director, a facilitator, an author. All kinds of ways to get involved.
Yeah.
We just had our annual conference last week, and we stressed and recognized all those volunteers that step up and really make OSBA what it is today. And our goal is to try to get as many members involved as possible. There's not such a thing that, well, we've already reached a quota, you can't get involved. We'll find a place. If you want to be involved with OSBA, there's a place at the table.
Wonderful. And your website?
www.osbo-ohio.org.
Awesome. Thank you. Craig, how can members get involved with the ESC?
Yeah, so very similar to Jim in that we have a number of standing committees that our members can be part of. We also, again, with the growth and some of the work we're doing, we've gone from being a staff of 1.5 for my first 21 years to now having 3 full-time staff and 5 what we call regional coordinators. And those regional coordinators are kind of supposed to be holding regular meetings out with the ESCs, being that conduit for information coming from the state so that they know what's going on, the latest things they should be aware of, but also getting feedback from the field back up to the department so that they're aware of what the challenges are and improve that communication. So attending any of those regional meetings as we start to get those rolling, which may be the end of this year or not till the start of next school year. But we also have bi-weekly meetings for the superintendents. That was something we've put in place over the course of the last few years and have sustained that. Monthly roundtables for our treasurers. And then we've got a Bassett ESC committee where we try and bring the ESC superintendents together with school district folks to talk about common issues and all kinds of opportunities that, again, we welcome all comers, and while we have minimum membership levels that we want on our committees, we never turn anyone away.
Awesome. And if they want to get more information, what's the website?
It's www.oesca.org.
Awesome. Dave?
So first I would say that if any superintendent wasn't a member and they called, they're still going to get service. They're going to get help with their contract. They're going to get help with what they need. But it's very clear that the involved superintendents and those that take it seriously as their PD and attend things and learn from the colleagues is huge. So driving in this morning, got a call from someone who just got a new superintendency just a month ago and said, how can I get more involved? And I talked to him about committees, and just for example, Kathy mentioned the women's leadership. We have a women's leadership committee, and that conference itself has grown from about 75 to 100 to I think we had 540 this year. Wow. So across the board, I always tell superintendents to get involved in committees that you don't understand. If you need help in school finance, you don't quite get it. People, I don't want to be on that committee. You need to be. Just you don't have to say anything, just listen. So a lot of different ways, not just with our conference, but that. I'll go downstairs and there'll be 2 or 3 calls and just questions and so forth of people getting them through the year. So supporting our members is critical to what we do and always will be. And to find BASA, all you got to do is Google BASA, and there we'll be with our smiles and really willing to help us. So.
Thank you, Dave. Kathy?
Yeah, so we have committees, and we have our call for nominations actually May 1st. So if our members are interested in getting involved in many of our committees, that will be, opportunities will be coming around May 1st. We have region managers that they can reach out to. We have 5 region managers in each of our region that they definitely can reach out to. But Dave hit on this a little bit. Pick up the phone, call us, look at our website, get actively engaged. If you don't know the answer to a question, call us. If we can't figure it out, we'll find somebody on the team that can, or we'll call one of our colleagues to say, hey, help us out. But I mean, I think you just have to get engaged. And I will say, hands down, I think that all of us sitting up here probably are extremely proud of the teams that we work with, the expertise, the knowledge that we have on our staffs. And we just say to our members, take advantage of it, right? Use it. That's what we're here for, is to support you once again so that you can support our students.
Kathy, Dave, Craig, Jim, thank you sincerely for being here with us today on the OSBA Forum. I want to thank you for your continued dedication to Ohio students, and I want to give a thanks to your staffs that you represent, because I know all the hard work that's happening. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that may never be in front of the camera. We want to thank them as well for their continued dedication on behalf of Ohio students. And of course, we want to thank all of our collective memberships for being here with us today. We hope you've benefited with this time that we've shared together. We're excited about our continued partnership and collaboration to make a difference for the students in the state of Ohio. So listen, have a wonderful Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful day, and thank you for being here at the OSBA Forum.